Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this special meeting with the Village Council and the Planning and Zoning Board. We are, I understand you're going to have to call your meeting to order also, Matt. So all I was going to say is that we had a couple of purposes behind this. One was to I think demonstrate to our residents that we do work together often, and we have a lot of obviously shared responsibilities, particularly in this area of planning and zoning that a lot of our residents have a real interest in. And it's a good chance to hear your thoughts and hear some of ours at one time and exchange questions and answers to things. Just as a note, Mayor Pro Tem Taylor is not going to be joining us today. He's had a little bit of a family issue he has to deal with at the last minute, but so it's unlikely. If he is here, he'll join us. So I've done my part. Matt, do you want to do yours?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Hereby call to order this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board for Tuesday, January 14th at 3:30 p.m. I'll ask the members of the board to introduce themselves to the council, but we do have some members of the board that are sick today also, are sick today and won't be able to be here, but
Sure.
Appreciate the invitation.
Go right ahead. Have your members announce.
Jimmy Duncan.
Sonia Austin.
Tom Schroeder.
Tom Schroeder. And we're joined by the head of planning department,
Alex Cameron.
Alex Cameron. Okay, I think we all have our name tags here, so that makes life easier for everybody. I guess on the agenda we roughed out, we put three items. One, the discussion on creating a steering working group for the UDO update. It's going to be held jointly with members of the Planning and Zoning Board and Village Council and citizens. A look at or guess at the UDO update timeline and other project updates. And then a quick update about the Moore County land use revision process, and then anything that's related to these things or are on other people's minds. I was going to start by asking Jack Farrell, sort of the dean of a lot of planning and zoning concepts over a period of time, just to say a few words, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. No, I think it's wise once in a while that we get together as a group, that is the Planning and Zoning Board and the Village Council. We certainly have a shared purpose and a shared objective, and that is to create the best land use possible for the village going forward. And having served on the Planning and Zoning Board, I know that it's a different role, but it's a vital role. And we, the council, look forward to the recommendations, although, quite honestly, in the past, they haven't been always followed. That has happened once or twice. But in any case, I think the Planning and Zoning Board provides a valuable service to the community. And I think I've said this a couple times, is that our development process is a little unique, I think, compared to some communities, is that we have two public hearings. In other words, we have an official public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Board, and we also have a public hearing before the council. And I think the value in having two is that it provides a visibility into what's going on to the community. I think by having a public hearing and all the necessary notifications and input from the public in a Planning and Zoning Board, it gives them one more view into what's going to happen, rather than wait for the actual decision process, which happens on a final basis with the council. So I've always felt that the Planning and Zoning Board provided a valuable service to the community by having that, and I'm glad we have that provision in our development ordinance. Going forward, this effort that we're going to start undertake, revising the PDO and creating a UDO, is going to be a significant process and a significant effort by the part of on the part of the planning department, for sure. and on the part of the Planning and Zoning Board to review it and make sure that it has all the provisions that you think are necessary going forward. So I look forward to the Planning and Zoning Board's input on that. So that's one of the major reasons we're here, is to discuss that UDO process.
Man, as someone who's attended many planning and zoning board meetings, just quietly sitting there, I've always learned a lot from each of you and some of the people who are missing here today that educates me and helps me see all sides of an issue. So I want to thank everybody for that and ask you to say a few words, and then we can start going back and forth.
Sure, I appreciate it. Like Jack said, I also feel strongly about the value of this board, and one of the things that it's taught me on my time serving as a member and now as the chair is how important what staff does and what you do, and our role in when we research and we review what's before us is helping you to be able to make an informed decision from our varied perspective, which is very varied. Different levels of experience. I mean, you have Sonia here, who served on a combined municipal and county planning board in Cumberland County for years. Luis, who was on a planning staff. So it's very interesting to me to see what different people bring up when they review, and the hope is that even whether our recommendation is a approval or a denial, either way, when you come to make a decision, you're in a better position to make that. And so, getting ahead a little bit, but one of the things that means a lot to us is knowing that what we've done in the time we've spent is valued by you all and is beneficial. So hopefully this communication is going to help that improve moving forward in future decisions. So, and we're definitely excited about the update and want to support staff and the council in any way we can. But this is the tool that we use when we do our reviews, and Jimmy's been excited about this since he came on the board, so he's a little odd, but we're excited. I'm glad that he's excited, and this is going to hopefully improve not just what we do, but obviously what applicants are putting together and the ease for them as well. So,
all right, let me kick off with one question I'd scribbled out. What changes in our PDO or our code would make your jobs easier or more efficient or improve? Do you have thoughts on your all's minds that, boy, I wish you guys could make some change to the PDO that does this?
Wait for me to ask. One thing I would like to get from y'all, and I think it ties into it, is right now, our PDO especially, there is, for lack of a better term, a lot of gray areas. And I have heard that some of those gray areas were put there intentionally. But I would like to know how gray the council would like to see these, as we're going forward, because coming from many, many years of working with regulations, normally I see a list of definitions and a list of requirements for whatever we do that are requirements. It's not requirements plus or minus. So that's what I would like to get from the council before we get into this is, how lenient do you want these regulations to be as far as the back and forth and what can get approved?
I think that's a good question. From the point of view of administrative decisions, normally we would expect, proposals that come forward, if they meet all the administrative guidelines, and then they are an administrative decision only. Of course, it may not even come before planning and zoning. But for those that aren't, that are legislative, and they're not conditional zonings, I think you're right, is that there shouldn't be a whole lot of gray area in those type of things. But as we go forward, you can see that we've put together small area plans, which essentially for decisions within those are conditional zonings. And so it's going to take a little bit of flexibility on your part and our part to manage through those, because we haven't, they can be a little tricky because it is a back and forth discussion. It's a condition that we both have to agree on, both the developer and the community. So I think that that'll be a challenge for you guys to handle the conditional zoning type of activity because, and I think you've seen it briefly recently, it can be challenging as to what conditions make sense for the community and for you. If you're looking for an absolutes in the development ordinance, I suspect you're maybe a little bit disappointed coming forward. Maybe Alex can comment on that a little bit.
So, aside from legislative decisions such as conditional zoning requests, zoning map amendments, or zoning text amendments, the only other two applicable decision types would be a quasi-judicial decision, which will be set and by established subjective standards, either by statute or by the local ordinance. Everything else is essentially administrative, so Jimmy, if you think you feel strongly about that, I feel 10 times more strongly that it has to be objective. And there's no doubt that there's areas, and the consultant will certainly help us through, where if there's ambiguity or opportunities for interpreting some provision one way and another way, we're going to reduce that. We're going to clarify and modernize a lot of the uses and the definitions so it removes a lot of that and through the process. And the wonderful part about going through the process is also as members of what we're recommending calling the focus group as part of that, but also as planning and zoning board members and village council through your respective roles through it, you're going to go through this whole education process. So at the end of it, we're all going to be so familiar with it and have such a greater understanding than what we already do now with the product we have. Mm-hmm. Hope.
Dr. Morgan, Barb, do you have any other thoughts?
I guess I would say that I totally agree with steering clear of gray areas as much as we can to the extent that we can. My observation, and I have a very limited observation time period, as you know, having been on the council for a year, but it looks to me like the gray areas are where we run into trouble. And certainly if we can avoid running into trouble and things are clear, we got a whole lot easier path going forward. So I would certainly commit to, from my perspective, steering clear of as much gray as I possibly can. I'll keep it on my head, but not in my heart for this. How about that?
I see the UDO update as another step forward in trying to decrease some of the grayness. Also, though, I'd like to say that I think our process that I've seen is a pretty good process. You cannot take away all grayness. You cannot take away all ambiguity. That's the reason we have committees. And it requires judgment, requires responsible people on it, which is what we have. Certainly in the P&Z, I appreciate the service of all members of the P&Z committee and all that you'll have done, and the judgments that you have to make with that. But I don't ever seeing us getting rid of all the gray areas. I never see us ever being able to replace the P&Z committee itself with just straight administrative stuff. So thank you for what you do.
I think you guys can be the first line of defense against making sure that there's no ambiguity as the UDO is developed. I think that's important because we've, and Tom knows this as well as anyone, that in the Board of Adjustment, which everyone's a member in some respect in the Board of Adjustment, any ambiguity in the PDO when granting variances can be a little bit problematic, and we've run into that occasionally in the past and had to make changes to the UDO to reduce that ambiguity. So to the extent you can reduce any ambiguity, that very, very, very important.
Members of your P&Z have thoughts?
Just a thought. I think that what we have said here is great as far as the committees, and I think going forward we really do need to work that we work together. And if we make a decision as a planning and zoning that the council understands why we made it, if there are any questions and you didn't come to the meeting or it's not in the media, then call a member and say, hey, why did you make that decision? I think that's important, and that's another way to keep the conversations open. And know what we're talking about in the future. Thank you.
Good point.
I would ask, we're also going to be taking a look at the comprehensive plan later this year, I think. Is that correct, Alex?
Maybe sooner than later. So
And, you know, and to your extent, you can provide some input on review of the comprehensive plan. That might be extremely valuable. Because, as you know, you have to at least declare to some extent in every land use decision its compatibility with the comprehensive plan. So don't be shy about raising your voice in that regards.
Great.
Matt?
One other thought, if we're in the things that are helpful category, last May, several members of the Planning and Zoning Board with staff attended a training at the UNC School of Governments. They do these in person or virtual at least once a year. But your support of training for volunteer boards, but ours specifically, because of the technical nature of, well, one, how some of the legislation lives in flux or is in a state of change, but being aware of what the sandbox is that we work in and what those rules and regulations look like. You know, your support from a council level of our training, and then when it's appropriate, your involvement in that training as well, I think would only foster the kind of cooperation and positive movement we're talking about.
Do we have or do we know of training that either the School of Government provides relative to changes that are seemingly ongoing in the legislature relative to the land use decisions? I don't know that they provide kind of a periodic update to planning boards or to council actually on how those would impact us. Do they?
Yeah, Codes Cannons is a blog that the UNC School of Government puts out on, you know, hot topic issues, or if there are no hot topic issues, sometimes they revamp a blog that's maybe becoming more significant or relevant from 10 years or prior. But most of those changes are typically reserved for through the certified zoning official, so the administrative staff, and so we're able to then provide that feedback back to the appropriate boards, whether it be a governing board or advisory board. And yes, with our annual workshops, the midwinter workshop is actually next month in Cary, which myself and a few other staff members will be attending. Adam Lovelady and Jim Joyce, who are sort of the two resident experts on planning and land use development in the state of North Carolina. There's always a legislative update. Obviously, I think we know one particular provision will be the main focal point next month when we convene. But yeah, staff's always willing and able to be able to provide that back. But through the regional workshops that the School of Government does each summer, typically each spring to summer, they hold them in different parts of the state. So various professionals and board members throughout the state can attend them with also typically an online version as well. They will include those updates where applicable depending on which topic they're covering.
Done those online ones.
I guess since you brought up the legislative education that's going to be coming up, I'll ask a question sort of related to that. I think you all recall that last year, I can't remember how long ago it was, 6-9 months ago, we actually had someone come before the Planning and Zoning Board and the council asking their property to be downzoned. You recall that? That was, I think Louise was in shock. I thought she was going to need smelling salt to get through the meeting. She was, and I'm curious, in general, are there reasons that a community would downzone aside from some personal requests? I mean, is the issue of water, is the issue of traffic, are those things that get factored in if someone comes through with a request or the council proposes something? What's your thoughts about that? What's something that can trigger that other than some individual who's pounding the desk, so to speak?
Well, the interesting thing about the legislation, I think, is that they're looking at downzoning not as just, intensity, but they're looking at even quantity of uses as
Uses, yeah.
counting that as downzoning, which is kind of I don't know, it seemed unique to me first time I
Yes.
had read that. So if you're talking about that, you know, I mean, most of what we have reviewed has been applicant, you know.
Conditional.
I mean, that specific application, applicant-driven, in which case there's no issue if there's consent of the property owner. So
Right.
could there be others? I mean, in a way, that's a part of what your small area plans is intended to look at uses that are congruous with the certain areas within the village, et cetera.
Well, let me revisit the two issues that crossed my mind. One was water, which is sort of hanging over not just us, but the county. And two, of course, is traffic, water, which is a little more, to me, really a deal breaker. What's your thoughts about that? Is that something that we should be questioning, or you should be questioning of applicants, or do they come in? Is there a portion of an applicant's proposal that deals with water?
Good question.
I've addressed,
Water belongs to the county. Water and sewer belongs to the county, and we have very little control over what the county does or doesn't do. That's their business. They own the water, they own the sewers, they pay for them, et cetera, et cetera. What we do, we get into it to the point of, has it been reviewed by the county water authority? And if it's been reviewed by the county water authority, then that's the check mark that basically we use. If they've already looked at it and they said it's okay, then that's as far as we go, because we don't really have any authority to go beyond that.
So is there a sort of regular county review from a water standpoint?
So through a conditional zoning request or a major site plan request and major subdivisions, which are all elevated to a recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Board to Village Council and a Village Council decision on those applications, yes, Moore County Public Utilities is part of a staff technical review on the application before it even can be scheduled for public hearing. Now, these are solely based on that individual application itself and not a holistic policy type discussion jurisdictionally wide. So to answer your question, Mayor, from my perspective, what changes or what would necessitate a community to consider downzoning, whether it be a previous definition or a current definition of downzoning, would be a change in policy. And typically they come about when you have projects such as a comprehensive plan or, you know, item C on the agenda when you're looking at updating a land use plan. You know, sometimes that's where you consider all these factors and you get that public input, and whether it be traffic or environmental constraints or just the overall community desires that will change or incompatibility or compatibility of uses, then you take that tool in that public policy process to enact or change any of the zoning designations you have.
Yeah, I would just like to jump in real quick. I want to echo what Alex said. I think the water issue is a higher level that as council and the managers speak with the county, if water is more of a concern, that's a much important, more higher umbrella than talking about each individual project as it comes before a planning board or before the council. So I think that's a higher level discussion. As far as, you know, our concerns with downzoning, I think we're in a good place because we have a mature zoning set up and map. There are other communities that, you know, everything's just zoned, you know, one general thing, and so if they ever need to change that, that's going to be a much more difficult thing for them to do. We've discussed, you know, some things that might need different zoning discretion, and, you know, maybe along like 211 is something that, you know, we may want to consider changing as part of the PDO update, and that potentially could be a downzoning that this new law would affect. So that would be the most likely area I see us having to deal with.
Remind me if we've discussed in the past the possible use of overlays, particularly as it regards 211. Is that something that you all will see and look at before it comes to the council, or how do we handle that?
That would be part of the PDO update.
That's going to be part of the
yeah.
UDO creation, yep, right.
The-
It could be. I mean, it's considered in the comprehensive plan, so we ought to at least talk about it at some point in time.
And it's not a unique concept here. We have overlays. We use the historic district as an overlay. We used to have Pinehurst South business overlay. We used to have highway corridor overlays previously, so it's not uncommon here, and it's a pretty easy tool to administer and develop.
And Mr. Mayor, I don't want to cut this conversation too short, but I'm a little concerned about the time if
Yeah.
we want to hear from Jeremy, especially on the land use
Yeah, sure.
revision. And I do want to make sure that we cover the work group and the potential candidates that Alex is suggesting that we go with.
Yeah, well, I know that that's also for a discussion in our work session too, am I not right?
No,
No,
it's only this meeting.
It's only this meeting, okay,
It's here.
okay. Well, anything else on the expected timeline? Does anyone want to look in a crystal ball and does the village manager
Yeah,
have a
Alex, you
crystal
probably
ball?
have the best idea, but I mean, when we met with Kimberly Horn, the consultant, it was 10 months to a 12-month process. We're getting into the first month, so the most important thing that they want us to do is get this focus group ready, so that this group will be able to give them feedback along the process, so we don't get to the end and everyone's like, hey, this is not what we wanted. We have
Right.
the ongoing feedback throughout the whole thing.
So Doug, as far as we know, the project schedule that they proposed, both in the document, the agreement, and also the proposal, the initial proposal, is still valid. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Largely, again, they're kind of waiting on a checkpoint from us now for
Okay.
this, what I recommend calling the focus group. And that way we can get that scheduled, as soon as next month. I think maybe that schedule may have even had the potential for the first meeting toward the end of this month. So we're within a couple of weeks from still being on task. And once I get that information to them, I'll have a revised schedule from them.
So that kickoff meeting is in the first month. Has that happened yet?
We've had a couple of virtual meetings. They have not come to the jurisdiction to necessarily
Okay.
like view the areas of interest they've had. But yes, staff and the consultant have met, and they've gotten all the deliverables earlier on that they needed from the village in order to start incorporating some of those, or at least start getting the ball rolling on what suggestions they may be making. Obviously, the recent legislation regarding downzoning is right there in the forefront of all our minds as we start to really try to develop some sort of regulation.
So you want a definition of it used to be called the steering committee. It doesn't matter. It's a steering work group is as good a nomenclature as others.
Focus group is what I'm
focus group
proposing,
is
yeah.
Alex's new.
The focus group is today's, okay.
Or we could be the trendsetter, who knows?
Congratulations.
Of the semantics on the name there, a focus group is fine with me.
Yep.
My understanding on there, though, is that and correct me if I'm wrong on this, we have approximately 5 meetings with this focus group and the consultants. They've requested that the group be diverse in the sense of different experiences as they bring forth, yet also being able to adequately represent us as stakeholders for Pinehurst, and also not to be too small to just have individual ideas going forth, but not be too big to ensure that we're able to adequately get things done in a reasonable amount of time. Is that all? That's where I took it from the meetings.
Absolutely, and you guys may recall when we went through the interview process with the 4 groups
Right.
that we interviewed, there was a lot of discussion on that particular topic themselves, and you got recommendations from them.
And that's what I'm referencing on there, was those conversations with that. Okay. I saw what you put forward on there, the personnel that we talked about that, and I think we're getting to the point of needing to go with the focus group. At this, I have no problems with what was proposed by Alex on there to go to, it seems like an adequate amount of people, and it seems to be adequate, and the diversification is what we need for people knowledge bases and be able to help with this in the UDO from my perspective.
Barb? Go ahead.
I agree with that. I think the focus group looks ideal.
I will add that Alex reached out to all the people on the list here, and they have all expressed interest. They're willing to do it. So if P&Z and the council is all amenable, we can move forward and let Kim.
As far
You want to read the names that we have on that from the email? I don't have that in front of me. right now.
It's on the screen. I can read it up. But we have 2 council members, so
Okay.
Jack and Barb, And then Matt and Jimmy representing P&Z. Kevin Fitzpatrick, he is a member of the NAC, the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. Bob Kuntz is a local land planner, works in this world. Calvin Berkeley is works for the resort. He is in charge of a lot of their major capital projects. And Travis Green is a local residential builder.
And as I remember, the meetings, and there's, I think, 5 anticipated, would be a matter of reviewing where we are and just sort of a checkpoint that, yeah, we're still going the right direction, or if there's something that seems to be out of kilter, we can maybe provide some advice and counsel as to half adjust or whatever you want to call it at that point in time. Is that correct?
Yep, and precisely, and through those 5 meetings are going to be, like initially it's probably going to be getting some feedback based on what staff and the consultant have worked as sort of like the structure or in the formulation of the document. How is it going to work? How is it going to flow? Not necessarily just a table of contents, but this is how it's going to be broken down, right? And then maybe the table of uses would probably be a big discussion group where what's recommended being changed, new uses that aren't included in the document, because it's a very difficult thing for local jurisdictions to try to contemplate every potential use of any type of building or land within their jurisdiction. And then, definitions, design standards, subdivision standards, things of that nature when it gets more into the, when the document's more put together, there's more flesh there for the focus group to kind of give some of that generic input on. And then there are going to be, check-ins with Planning and Zoning Board and Village Council through that process to kind of get more feedback. But luckily, we have a good representation from both parties as part of that focus group. And then there'll also be sort of, the public open house and then the actual public hearings that will take place in order to get that additional public feedback.
Matt, did you have a thought?
Sonia and I were commenting on the group. I think this is a good group. There is only one female on the group. I didn't consider if we need to look at diversity of opinion and experience on the group, if there was anybody else to add.
I would like to see you add one more member, if that's not too much work. I don't want to do it, okay? So that's not my point. But I think you should maybe have a female that's just a resident that doesn't have all these titles that could give some positive or negative input. But I think that the citizens, once you take it out to the public meetings, might like that. Just a suggestion.
I have no objection to adding another member if there'd be nice if we knew a name or a suggestion, so we can sort of put it to bed.
Yeah, I'm pretty anxious to kind of get this started.
Like,
If we can move forward with this group, and Alex and I will look at another alternative member, and we can do that by email if everyone agrees to it. We can work that way.
okay, sounds good.
Do we need a formal?
We don't.
So just the fact we're giving thumbs up in this group right now from majority of the folks?
I see lots of head nods, so we're good
All right.
there.
Fine. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we also have Jeremy here, who is available to update us on the county land use plan.
Come on down, Jeremy.
Anyway, we can turn these on right here.
Oh, is yours not on?
That's the reason I didn't. Reason I didn't know there were names up there.
Should we swear him in? I mean, just to make sure.
Jeremy, do introduce yourself for those people who will be watching this on videotape or are remotely looking at this.
Sure. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Jeremy Hooper here. I'm honored to come and sit in front of both of these groups. Certainly council, but extra special the Planning and Zoning Board group as I am a alumni of that group. So certainly privileged to sit in front of you today, as well as give you an update on the Moore County Land Use Plan. There's been a lot of work put into this by a committee, not only our committee that's helping, but also the Moore County staff in general. And I'm quite impressed really with the amount of information as well as, a lot of the thought that's been put into this. My presentation today is going to be very general in nature. It's going to be seemingly basic, but the idea is to give you the process of the timeline, what's kind of expected from the county of when it's going to be implemented. I actually just got some updated timeline information, so one of my bits of info is going to be incorrect, as well as give you some insight and some thought to what in the future could be an issue, when we think about growth considerations for our county. So, with that, please stop me, ask any questions. I'm happy to answer anything. I know there's been a lot of information thrown at us as a committee. I am not an expert on any of it, well, little, but however, I'm happy to get any information that is requested. So, Shannon, do you want to push, or do you have
I can do it.
You want to do it? Okay. All right. So a little bit of background on the plan. The current land use plan was adopted in 2013, so seemingly old. In January and February of 2024, county commissioners began this process by conducting listening sessions and feedback from the public to gather input from our general citizens. The Land Use Steering Committee was formed in June of 2024 and began meeting in July. 32 community leaders and subject matter experts. That steering committee, our last meeting will be March of this year. And that steering committee, the roster is online. Please feel free to take a look at it, but I think you'll see that it's made up of a lot of really our community's stakeholders that have a lot of stake in this plan. Our process leaders will then assess our community input and begin the new draft of the land use plan. There's going to be plenty more opportunities for our citizens of Moore County to participate. A draft will be then completed or processed through the county planning board and onto the county commissioners to finalize. I have the expectation for completion is sometime this fall. However, the updated information is they hope to have a general draft in June. In March, our last meeting will be to review what our process leaders deem as somewhat of a draft plan. So there are 5 general goals of the land use plan. These are being worked as we speak today. We do have a meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, and this is the general theme. There is a number of ongoing goals as well as recommendations to support these goals. I will send these to you via email, but given our time frame tonight, there is a number of those. I welcome any feedback as well as, I know that the process leaders of the county would as well. So I'll send these to you, but I'll read them now. So goal 1 is to preserve and protect the ambiance and heritage of the county of Moore, and this is inclusive of areas around our municipalities. Goal 2 is to enhance the union of the built and natural environments to improve citizen health through the use of open space and recreational opportunities. Goal 3, optimize the uses of land within the county of Moore. Goal 4, provide information and seek citizen participation. And goal 5 is accommodate for a variety of housing types. So tonight we will address these goals. There will be, conversation about adding others, subtracting some, as well as making any additions, corrections, or removal of any of the additional recommendations. And if anybody who wishes to do so can dig in further, at the Moore County's website, at the land use plan, it has the 2013 document as well as all the work that we have done. So, one of the overarching premises of the work of our committee is really the growth estimate that we're focused on for 2050. The Office of State Budget and Management, OSBM, projects Moore County population across the 179,000 population mark. That would be an increase of more than 72,000 people from the 2023 population data. A little bit more than 2% annualized growth between now and that time frame. So, of course, that's a debatable number. Absent of any data that says anything different. That's the data and the premise that we are working on as from a committee, as well as the process leaders, as well as the county, staff. And giving a flexible idea of if growth ended up being 1.5%, that would increase our population to 150,800. Hitting 2% exactly would be 170,600. Hitting a population growth of 2.5% would be 192,800. So
Jeremy, do you know what the historical rate has been?
it follows 2%, and there's been a lot of input and looking into this, and the OSBM missed the 2020 mark by about 3,000 people,
This is the total county, including all the municipalities?
including all the municipalities.
He's not with us for this meeting, but John Taylor has done some extensive work on this very issue of the population projections, and he wrote a piece in the pilot for that. And he's been in discussions with the state demographer, and so he's raised some issues about going from 72,000 to 170,000, which is, I don't know, what is that, 120% increase?
Well, I think the 72,000 was
We're like 108.
yeah, we're close
okay,
to
so
the
it's at
100,000 number.
100,000, so that's at 2%, that's a 70% increase.
Large increase. Yes,
That's
sir.
a very ambitious number. So I do think we need to probably take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. But at any rate, this is
I
something to
agree.
think about.
I actually agree with you there, and I think our committee has raised some of those same questions. Absent of data that states anything separate, moving forward with the land use plan, this is really, what the county has to move forward with for expectation.
Right.
We'll see a lot of density or rural development. I almost put density versus rural development, but I think that's going to be the common, argument a lot in our county. If we keep 72,000 people in our mind, something to think about is the three largest Moore County towns have approximate density of 1,000 population or less per square mile. Interesting note that our largest community here in Moore County with the largest density is actually Whispering Pines at a little over 1,300. Pinehurst is 1,052 per square mile. Aberdeen is approximately 815 per square mile. Southern Pines is 885 per square mile. We compare that to some of our neighbors. Cary at 2,915 per square mile. Moore County in general is 142 per square mile. Wake County is 1,023. So just to give you a little bit of a frame of reference of density, I've measured a lot of our communities statewide. This is pretty common. 1,000 is common within many of the communities our size. And I think I put Cary there in general because of the distance between the center of Pinehurst to the center of Southern Pines is about 6 miles. So we take 6 miles and it still does not cross the full distance of Cary. And I think, just to give a little bit of an expectation of, or a little thought process to frame it for us all. So if we use the 1,000 people per square mile as an average density, and we welcome 72,000 people, if this comes to fruition, then we either need two things. We need 72 new acres of developed land, or we need municipalities to increase density. And I think that's going to be I think coming out of this plan, that's going to be the two common themes. So.
Jeremy, if I can interrupt for a
Please.
second. I just got one quick question.
Please.
Is that the area calculated on include the ETJs or not?
So yeah, it's a total of the whole county.
No, but like we calculated Southern Pines, which has a whole lot of ETJ, so that would increase the square mile part of the calculation. So I just wondered whether it was just the formal village boundaries or the village boundaries with the ETJ space included.
Sure, it's not inclusive of the ETJs.
Okay, it's not, so that would go over to the county side.
That
All right,
would-
that's,
that's,
I just wondered to know, because a couple of those are pretty extensive differences.
Yep, big differences. This is a picture of Moore County that stays in our meeting room, at the county. And it's to give us an idea of what 72 new acres would look like to our county as developed. And I just thought it was important to show you all, again, for a frame of reference of what 72 new developed acres would look like. Some of the development considerations that have been discussed with our committee, and you'll see some common theme here of some of this, is approximate 70 square miles of ETJ are under municipal zoning in Moore County. That is a topic that is discussed. Approximately 94% of Moore County is zoned as rural agriculture. Again, that's an interesting number, for us to kind of see the give and take and again, density versus development of rural. Obviously, as touched on earlier, public water supply considerations and the watershed restraints that we have, certainly as we move to the northern side of Moore County. I'm not a water expert. I will mention that Matt here has a great relationship with Brian Patho, and I'll tell you that of all the county staff members that I have met, he's one of the brightest, and I think we're lucky to have him here in Moore County. And going forward, I think Matt also can help you with that. An interesting note, just give you a little plug.
Appreciate it.
Just to give you a little plug, or throw you under the bus, one of the two. So an interesting note here is the number of land parcels that are within 300 feet of public utilities, and that's a consideration because of two things, really. Greater density many times can equate to less infrastructure cost, because if we have obviously more people living on one street and we're running one, set of sewer and water lines, it can be less expensive than spreading, it out through the county. And also something to consider is if we do get 72,000 people, many times the migration of people as population grows is focused on, really the more urban areas. So, next one. So I thought this was going to be important to maybe show you as well, to maybe frame some reference. And these are the number of parcels within our county that are within 300 feet of either one, public water, or public sewer, or both. And I think that when we look at the amount of parcels, that are within 300 feet of public water, they're within the light blue. Within the light green are within 300 feet of public sewer. And within 300 feet of both are light tan. And we really can take a look at really how small that area is.
This implies that much of Southern Pines and Aberdeen are not within 300 feet of a public water and sewer.
So there is some consideration that Southern Pines is actually on their own water and sewer program, which is not listed here.
They're not, when they say public water, they mean
County.
their water, Moore County
Or county
utilities.
water.
Okay, got it.
Yes. And I can get you that information as well, but so that's absent.
Yeah, and Whispering Pines also is private.
Yeah. So this is interesting as we talk about upzoning, and downzoning. These are the number of new parcels that have been created since 2013, since our land use plan was created in Moore County, and it's 12,124. And of course, Alex or Matt can give into the many ways that parcels can be created, but of course, it's either developments, breaking up land, that type of scenario, but 12,124 parcels were created. And I'm going to end this tonight just with a series of enters here. So we take a look at the structures. I found this interesting and I wanted to show you as well. So, all the dots on the map are structures that have been noted within our GIS system. And, we'll go through each decade, 1931, and then if you'll just keep pressing, slowly through, 1940, 1950, up to 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, and then 2012, and to 2023. So I found that interesting as well, for us to consider it also. Happy to answer any questions. I'll also state that, really a piece of that the county recognizes, and I think from the spirit of the plan, or at least from all the work sessions that I've participated in so far, have been open to municipal collaboration. And I think that's going to be very, very important for us here in Pinehurst, either to look for the ways, whether it's through elected officials to elected officials, or whether it's staff to staff. And I think, many times the feeling is that collaboration may not be there. So, anything that we can do to maybe collaborate, again, whether it's just staff to staff, because one of the roadblocks of this plan, the county's going to spend some money on this plan, a lot of time, and without municipal collaboration, there's a lot of roadblocks involved. So that's just as well as, legislation. So as we all seen, which is speeding this up a little bit. And so that's my presentation. So happy to answer any questions.
Council members, any questions? Barb, Jack?
Would you akin this to our comprehensive plan?
No, that's, Jack, it's interesting because I've really been trying to find considerations to it. It's obviously the closest thing that the county has to a comprehensive plan. But, one thing I'll point there, so yes, I would akin it, but one thing that I'll point out there is just like our comprehensive plan, the elected officials, how they use this going forward is going to be the most important thing.
I think is this correct, Alex, that even the county, when they determine land use decisions, they have to reference their land use and or comprehensive plan, whichever it is?
Yes, and I don't want to speak for county staff, but I've had many conversations with them and for folks who are going through their process. I think that was one big driver for them to update their current land use plan, current 2013 land use plan, is because their UDO conflicted so much with these applications and with their land use plan. So they're trying to catch things up and get them in sync, and it would be that guiding policy document for them. It is very similar to a comprehensive plan. It's just not as comprehensive. It's going to be focused more on land use and those other considerations that factor into or feed into land use or vice versa.
I thought the objectives, the 5 objectives in the beginning were narrower than our objectives that we have in our comprehensive plan, if I can use that word. They're less global. They're very specific as they go towards these objectives about housing and a couple other things.
Yes, sir.
A little different, for sure.
And when I'll send out the further recommendations to that to each one of everybody here.
Please do. Other questions?
Do they plan on, I think I know the answer to this, do they plan on reviewing this and or at least giving some heads up or preview to the municipalities as this, thank you for you being here, but are the municipalities going to at least have some view into what's going to happen?
I know that our committee members are going to continue to be, somewhat tethered to it. However, again, we're not the driver, we're not the writers of the plan, and that's, I am a little concerned that once that's cut, then I think the intent to have municipal dialogue and municipal input is there, and I think it's very, I was being honest when I said the spirit of that is there, but we all know when things get busy that sometimes that falls apart, and I'm trying to find out if maybe we reach out first or are they going to reach out first. And so I've also asked them, hey, what's the next steps really for municipal collaboration? In fact, I asked that 30 minutes ago.
It's even difficult to go to the meetings because it happens to be on exactly the same night that we have council meetings.
Yeah.
I think they did that on purpose.
They totally chose. And it's on the exact same nights we have council meetings. It is open to the public, I'll point out that.
And Jack, if it helps you feel better, I am happy to talk to county staff about, giving us an opportunity to review it.
If we get a view into how it's being formulated, yeah.
Why don't we ask that, and then if we need to, we can be formal about it. But informally, I think they probably would accommodate us as well as other municipalities if they want to buy in,
There's been a lot of data given to us as committee members, and it would be good to review it, yes. For you.
Thank you. Sure. Any other comments from P&Z folks on this?
Thanks, Jeremy. The one thought I had is the county has a lot of responsibility, you know, I mean, and their responsibility includes all the municipalities and all your numbers that are population-based. I mean, none of those were, you know, excluding municipal population data, right? So it'd be interesting to know what's the density just in the county spaces, because obviously that number is a lot lower. It's, you know, to be 160 or whatever it is.
When it's 142,
Yeah,
inclusive
I mean,
of
that's
us.
inclusive.
Yeah.
But it's a big effort. Seems like something longer term working together beyond just the development of this document. It may be needed, but I appreciate it.
Thank you
Well,
very much.
this
Appreciate
has
that.
been and I learned a lot.
Cool.
Thank you, Jeremy, and
Jeremy?
Planning and Zoning Board members. I think we'll entertain a motion here at the council level to wrap this up.
I move to adjourn the special meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, approved, and the
I
Planning and
move to adjourn the P and Z.
Motion by Bruce, second by Jimmy. All in favor of Planning and Zoning Board meeting closing? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we will regroup in about 5 minutes here to begin our regular council meeting.